All right, so first up, we have Aaron Said from International Lubricant Distributors. Aaron, oh, okay, great. All right, so Aaron is the National Technical Manager and Head of Technical. He leads technical services at International Lubricants Distributors, specialising in lubrication excellence and oil condition monitoring. With 20 years experience and multiple SDLE and ICML credentials, he focuses on reliability improvement in high-demand industrial environments. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte, for the introduction. My name is Aaron Said from International Lubricant Distributors / Premium Lubricant Supplies Asia. We are from Australia, and my goal for this presentation today is to bring an awareness or give particular attention that no matter how low carbon, high efficiency lubricants is, if the end users or the finished product do not apply good lubrication practices, sustainability outcome cannot be delivered. And the approach to good lubrication practices is via lubrication excellence. And that's the topic for today, which is the pillar of the energy transition, reducing emissions, waste, and operational costs. So what's wrong with these pictures? So we are in the lubricant industry. We are the formulators, the marketeers, the distributors, the manufacturers. So our goal is to produce a lubricant, high quality lubricants to give a reliable machine operations. And under sustainability point of view, we want to have the lowest carbon footprint as possible. But if you go to site, you go to see your customers and you see this, it breaks your heart. I know it breaks my heart. And I put a run on LinkedIn to see that how do they treat the end products. You can see the first photo is basically synthetic oil. It's worth $20,000. We just leave it out in the open in the mine sites. And you can see the middle photo is basically the jug that they use to oil transfer. Surely there will be some contamination there, cross-contamination, and you got water accumulated on top of the drums. So clearly, this will lead to premature failures, reliability issues on their machines, and we wonder why this happens. Okay, the main reason is basically the gaps in knowledge and the gaps in execution. And there comes opportunities whereby lubrication excellence can play a role. So a bit of introduction about ourselves. We are based in Perth, Australia. We have operations all over the country. We mainly support the mining operations of Australia, and we have products that are able to support the demands or the severity of the mining operations, which I'll cover in a minute. And our key strength is basically technical services. So a bit of overview of mining operations in Australia in terms of the processes itself. Of course, it started with the exploration to find the ore deposits, and then we have open pit mining, surface mining. This is a large scale excavation project that involves excavators, haul trucks, loaders, dozers, and drill rigs, which is a huge user of lubricants because they have got high equipment utilization hours and also frequent oil drain. So open pit is one thing, and then we got an underground. Underground is also a huge user of lubricants. They use a lot of engine oil and gear oils and hydraulic oils. And the particular challenges in underground is basically water. There's a lot of moisture down there. And it's definitely also working in a confined space and put a bit more stress on the oil. And then we have processing plants with the crushers, grinders, mills. So it does not use that many lubricants as in open pit and also underground, but it has more variety of lubricants. We have different type of viscosities and different type of greases for specific applications. Of course, mine sites are located in very remote areas. They need to generate their own power, so we have power generation facilities, power plants. We're talking about turbines, stationary gas engines, which require a different set of products. And of course, they all need to be transported over to the ports and for exports, and definitely require road trains. So there are also a big use of lubricants, railways, and also transshippers, where they transport the materials up to the ocean into a very large ore carrier. So a little bit of quick overview of the mining scene in Australia. So it contributes about 10% of Australian GDP. It has about total 500 mine sites altogether, but the active ones about 50, the rest are in care and maintenance. And Australia is basically number one producers in iron ore and bauxite, titanium, lithium, and also in terms of resources itself, uranium and gold is number one in the world. So what are the challenges in mining, specifically on lubrication challenges? The first is an extreme heat and thermal stress. We're talking about ambient temperatures 40 degrees, 50 degrees in some parts of Australia, especially in the Pilbara region. So from the start, the oil is already hot and then put under the machines and under continuous operations, it will go even hotter. So it puts a lot of thermal stress on the lubricants. And then there's severe dust and abrasive contaminations. We know that the majority of the problems or failures of the machines is basically related to dirt contamination, and depending on the size. We're not worried so much if the size of particulates is more than maybe 100 microns because it won't go through the filters, but the smaller the particles is more sensitive. We're talking about 1 to 10 microns. You can't even see with your eye. That is the most critical, and it will interrupt the fluid film surface, the wet fluid film protection of the metal-to-metal contact. And water ingression, certain parts of Australia are subject to flooding, rains in certain parts of the year. And also because of the very dusty environment, those machines are subjected to frequent wash downs, need to be washed before it goes to the workshop for servicing. So high pressure water will introduce contamination in the compartment. And of course, high loads and shock loading is another challenges, whereby we're talking about 300 to 400 tons that per load that they are dealing with, and a shock loading. So some lubricants will require solid lubricants to absorb the shock. Continuous operations and long drain intervals, there's a pressure to basically extend the operating hours, and also they put a pressure on oil to extend the life. Of course, location is very remote, and access to specialist maintenance parts may take days or even weeks because of where they are. And also safety, environmental and regulatory pressures in terms of oil spillages, leaks are under a lot of scrutiny, and of course ESG as well. Now, the top three consumables in the mining industry are these: fuels, tires, and lubricants. Out of these three, only one has direct impact on the survivability of lubricants. And of course, we're talking about lubricants, right? And definitely we need to reframe lubricants as a strategic reliability asset, as an asset rather than a consumables, because lubricants is responsible to protect expensive machines, expensive equipment. And this is an important shift in mindset to allow us to go into a lubrication excellence journey better. Now we look into the opportunities. Okay, a report says that in the lubricant industry itself has carbon emissions about 150 million metric tons a year, which is responsible to overcoming friction and wear that has a potential or basically generate CO2 emissions of over 8,000 CO2 emissions a year. So there's a huge opportunity, and over many different approaches and strategies, definitely lubrication excellence is one of them. And if you just narrow it down to just a mining industry alone, it's basically about close to 1,000 million tons a year. So there's clearly a huge opportunity. We as industry player in terms of the material itself, in terms of the formulations, and of course, assisting the end users to get the most benefit out of the high quality lubricants that we produce. So what is lubrication excellence? It's basically the execution of the precision lubrication practices that aligns machines, lubricants, human activities with recognized best practices to enable reliable asset performance. So at every stage, every chain of steps that customer from the selection to receive up until disposal, a break in the chain will definitely generate energy losses, wastage, and of course, increasing cost. And the benefits of having a lubrication excellence program is basically waste reduction, emission reduction, cost reduction through fuel oil changes, extended component life, and so on. So the area that to focus on under lubrication excellence, the selections, storage and handling, contamination control, those are the areas that I'll cover in a minute. So just to give you an idea how it looks like, right? Just to demonstrate. Let's say we have a dump truck. This is maybe 300-ton dump trucks. I'm talking about engines itself. And basically, if there's no intervention, there's no drive for improvement, typically an engine can go 12,000 to 18,000 hours of life, right? So we consider this as business as usual. It is business as usual until it isn't, because we can easily fall into complacency, neglect, lack of focus, then it'll go into poor substandard maintenance. So the way to go is basically to improve and to embark on a lubrication excellence program, so which has the potential to extend the life of that engine 30,000 hours. Why not? Maybe double it up. And this is within the control of lubrication excellence, whereby lubrication selection is important, whether it's synthetic or mineral, the strategies for contamination control, oil drain extension, and so on. So the opportunities is many. And it's just that the matter of a company, how the company want to drive that is critical, and most of the organizations out there do not have the expertise, which is why we come into the picture to assist them and to support them. And over 35 years of bearing failure data also identify that 9 out of 10 failures of bearings are related directly or indirectly to lubrication, right? And if you go into the OEMs like HKF or FAG, they all mention at least more than 50% of the causes of their bearing failures are due to poor lubrication. So there's definitely huge opportunity. And of course, this will generate more emissions and costs. So what are the frameworks? The frameworks for lubrication excellence, there are several, and this is one suggested by NORIA. It is very comprehensive. The issue with this is that it's too detailed, and not many companies value this and maybe don't want to put so much resources into it. And it's very comprehensive. If they can do it, that's the best. It's one of the best, but most companies don't see it. And there's another one issued by IMAP, International Council of Machinery Lubrication. They have this standard, ISML 55, which aligns to ISO 55000 asset management standards. For those companies who want to go to the certifications, it is advisable for them to go through this framework so that they can have their lubrication, hydrocarbon management standards in place. But again, it is too detailed, very comprehensive. Not many companies, again, they have the resources and see the value. So the approach is to see what is the best, what is the approach to get the best back out of the investment. So we have identified 5 key areas for them to basically follow. So you look into our lubrication standards. So basically in the 3 areas: selections, consolidation, and procurement. So by getting this alone, maybe they get 50% of their journey correct, and then followed by the 5 R's of lubrication. What are they? The right oil, the right place, at the right time, the right quantity and method. We don't want to over lubricate. We don't want them to under lubricate. It has to be just nice and the change at the right time, and of course preventing any mistakes and product cross contamination. And the next will be the storage and handling, profile identification, control environment, all sort of things, and also control contamination through exclusion and removal. It is much more expensive for them to remove contamination rather than to prevent contamination. Basically, prevention is better than cure in that sense. And oil analysis program. There are 7 rights to oil analysis program. Our customers sending 20,000 samples a year. They have all this data, but they are not using it, or the data is useless because they are not sampling correctly. So there are so many errors. They're not relying on that data, but they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the data. So how do we do the steps of lubrication excellence? Of course, we perform an audit, we do assessment, and when we find a gap, we propose them solutions, and we monitor the improvements. Of course, we want that to be sustainable, and this is where we emphasize a lot of trainings to our customers, everybody in the end users that basically deals with lubricants. We invite them for a training session so that they know their responsibilities, what they need to do. This basically change in mindset of looking in lubricants as an asset rather than consumables. So I'm going to quickly share with you a few case studies. The first is basically, this is a lithium plant. They have a screen exciters that had been failing 6 times a year. Okay, the middle picture is basically what it looks like. It's basically try to sort out materials according to the size. It has been failing, and looking at the third photo is basically the damage it caused to the bearings. And we have identified the cause, and clearly it is basically related to contamination. Basically, abrasives that got into the oil, and you can see how they have been managing it. It's very poor, similar to the earlier photo that I shared. And to address this issue is basically to have a proper contamination control and storage approach, right? Storage strategies. So we basically help them with the sea containers. You can see the 2 of this photo is still very dusty, even though it's covered. So look how much dust in the area, but at least it's covered. It had breathers and also have a proper transfer container, which is color-coded, be identified by product. And of course, they directly see the results from 6 failures a year to 0. So each of these exciters cost 50,000 USD. So that's basically saving 300 USD alone. And their investment with all these initiatives is less than $20,000. So you can see how much return they can get from a simple change in the way they store lubricants. And the next one will be just the hydraulic oil. So they have been failing prematurely, the hydraulic pumps at 2,000 hours, 4,000 hours, which is very low because this oil can go up to 12,000, 15,000 hours, the hydraulic pump. So we identify basically a wrong selection of hydraulic oil. So basically the hydraulic oil they have been using is not from the one that we supply, but they have not been able to cope with the demand of the machines. And of course, they have seen clearly the result. You can see the cumulative wear of the hydraulic pump, clear difference, and they're able to last the lifetime, the expected lifetime of that pump. And finally is oil drain optimization. So the problem with this is this truck has a wheel motor that the OEM does not give any oil change advice. They don't tell the end user how long the oil should last in their compartment. So they just give the component where also when you reach 121 ppm, you should change oil, or 193, you should change oil. So it's difficult for this to fit with our customers' maintenance strategies. So they just arbitrarily take 2,000 hours change, and over 2 years, we have managed to have some sufficient data. And we do a bit of data analysis, and now with AI, this can be done easily and able to perform a model to identify the most optimal drain intervals. So imagine going from 2,000 hours, and we identify it can reach 6,000 hours, basically 3 times the life of the oil, and that saves 200,000 a year. So as in summary, lubrication excellence amplifies the value of high quality, low carbon lubricants, enabling immediate and low capex reductions, energy consumption, GHG, and total cost of ownership. And sustainability begins with lubricants no longer treated as consumables, but managed as an asset for reliability of equipment, efficiency, and environment. So the most sustainable lubricant is the one that is managed excellently. That's all I have for now. Looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Registration card things on the back. Please put your questions in there and don't forget to click the thumbs if you like the question, because that will bring it up to the top of the list. But whilst we're doing that, I'm going to get us started on a general question for everyone across our panel. We often talk about sustainability in terms of product formulation, and I noted that many of you did not fill up today. So how important is lubrication practices and lifecycle management in delivering real sustainability outcomes? Aaron, do you want to start here?
No, it's
not on the list. It's not on the list. Would you like me to repeat? We often talk about sustainability in terms of product formulation, and my observation is that none of you picked this up today. How important is lubrication practices and lifecycle management in delivering real sustainability outcomes?
The real sustainability outcomes in relation to formulation. So it's very key. I mean, this is basically a start whereby formulations can be friction reducing, friction and more synthetic and so on. But in the sense that later in my presentation, it's more towards the implementation, actually the use of lubricants at the end user's stage that determines the outcomes of sustainability, no matter how good the lubricants is, no matter how low friction it is, if the customers do not appreciate, even we're talking about most expensive lubricants that we supply, even then they do not value it in terms of as a strategy to gain cost advantage or competitive advantage. So I think it's still a journey is still there. It's a continuous journey for us to deal with the end user, to educate them and to make them more aware of that.
Thank you. Inge?
Yeah, I think it's, as said already, it started all with R&D. So with the formulating of a product, so it's an opportunity. It's to maybe look at the redesign of a product with alternative feedstock, with clean feedstock, and improving the formulation and the efficiency of a product by using alternative products, of course. And especially with a digital product passport coming up, which also affects the Asian region or the American region as well by importing to Europe. This is, of course, an important topic where every region needs to look at.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think we can very easily say, oh gosh, Europe's going through a complex time. But it'll be relevant for anyone who comes into the country, comes into the continent, I should say.
I see once in Asia was actually the slogan factory that resources are limited but creativity is unlimited. And yeah, that's an excellent idea because the resources indeed we have are limited. And what we have here, EPP or the idea of sustainability, helps us to use the resources more effective, and therefore it's absolutely necessary to have some ideas and not to generate waste and waste money and waste resources.
I think there's a question on DPP, just while we're on the topic. Can we bring that up? I think it was, is it applicable to lubricants? Is it going to be mandated? And if so, what does that look like?
It will be mandatory for lubricants, and it will come into force not early as 2030. And basically, it will summarize what I want to mention, certain properties of the lubricant, whether it contains recycled content, in which amount, how it can be recycled, how it can be improved by adding an additive or whatever, what is the performance expectations, what is the product carbon footprint. All this information is split into a database, and maybe you can contact here how it will function, whether we get an QR code or it will be physically delivered, I don't know. But somehow information will be collected and transported with the good. Not only the lubricant, but also the furniture, the tire, whatever. And which is good. The idea is that the consumer is able to take an educated decision which product to buy.
It's very impressive. And I think it picks up a lot of the risk that's been identified around greenwashing. I can see this as being the solution, but to pull something off as complex as that, I can see will be a big hurdle to overcome at the same time. Very good. Okay, let's go from our top question there. Are European consumers ready to pay a premium for products that are greener and have lower carbon footprint, etc.? Stefan, I'll aim that one at you. And then Inge, if you want to add anything onto that.
Good question. Good question. If you ask consumers in Europe, they will also always answer yes. But when it comes to the shop, they decide for the cheaper product. I'm afraid.
I agree. I think especially right now, when you look at the current political situation or every company, of course, has other priorities and not looking more or less on sustainability and willing to pay a premium, but more focusing on their areas where to save money on and where to have my raw materials collected. So there are other priorities indeed. But as said already, sustainability won't go away. It's still here to be there for the next future. It's essential that we work on it. And somehow I think it will be a journey that everyone will pay a premium, is willing to pay a premium somehow, and will be, I think, also adopted in the normal business as well. And I think it's like economy of scale. Sometimes if there is a higher demand on sustainable products, the raw materials for that becomes more affordable, I think. But I think it's a journey, and it depends really on the geopolitical environment.
Also, I think in some time it goes slower than we hope that it will do. But I recall there's an old book from the 60s or so, an American book. Right? No, because
No need to apologize.
because they wrote about how to dispose engine oil, used engine oils. And it was really dig a hole in the garden, yeah, put sand in, and then put the oil in. That was the recommendation how to get rid of used engine. Nobody will do that today because we have care about our environment nowadays, and the same is will maybe come to sustainability. That we in 10, 12 years we no longer debate the question of sustainability adjustment.
I think that's a good example, especially with re-refined base oil. If you look for Europe, for example, so re-refined base oil become a very important enabler for sustainable and circular materials or circularity. And in the past, no one was willing to pay the same price for a re-refined base oil as for virgin base oil, but now it's the same price level and sometimes even higher depending on the demand and supply.
That's an interesting thing. I recall a couple of years ago, re-refined base oil was something dark and smelly and stuff. Nobody wanted it. Nowadays it becomes it.
Fortunately, we've moved on from there. Thank you to all the re-refiners and technology providers in the room. You've done a great job. So, Aaron, I want to stick with the commercial viability piece. When we're looking at the technical service value proposition that you spoke of earlier, sometimes when we're looking at products with extended oil drain intervals, that might come at a premium price. How do you overcome this conversation around cost versus performance and convince them to go down a pathway of looking how to get the best out of their products and maybe target a product that has a higher spec or has higher opportunity? And maybe not just for Australia, but I know that's a good case study, but any experience or advice for those other countries that are very price focused at a customer level?
Yeah, that's a very critical question. The key is basically to model the benefits so that in order to convince the decision makers, especially the CEOs, the CFOs, because most of them do not get the point of buying more expensive oil. I think the most important thing is to get customers that have success stories. And that's where relationships comes in, the trust comes in, the credibility comes in. When they trust us, they've shown that we are genuine in wanting to help them save costs, even though the initial outlay will be more. Then that's the way that we can overcome this, basically generating the trust and credibility for them to go ahead, maybe go for a trial and see for themselves how much, whatever the price difference that they'll pay, will get the return in medium or the long term. So the challenge is there. It's basically just building trust.
Trusting proof points.
I think it's always to convert the benefits into money, right? So I think if the customer looks at the savings he could make with this product, I think he'd be more willing to switch over, and it's everything is backed by data. So data are the most relevant currency right now.
It's a very nice line, Inga. Yeah, we'll pick up your question. Aaron, I'm assuming this is targeting you as well. His experience is that end users are unaware of their sub-optimized lubricant procedures. How to work on this aspect?
Yeah, that's from my experience too. Most people have no idea that lubricants can bring so much benefits to their operations, and they keep on firefighting. They are busy addressing issues rather than preventing issues. It goes back to education and basically get the top-down support to drive that initiatives. Lubrication excellence is a way for us to address this, get them to invest a bit more on training, on the toolings, on the procedures, spend more time on that. get the procedure right, and have someone to champion it and basically monitor the progress. Monitoring progress is very important, and to see the effectiveness of what we are doing. And this also helps them to capture the savings and the benefit from the investment. So it is true, it is still a challenge, and as long as we continue to educate end users of the awareness, that's why we see several bodies are still, and maybe ALIA also can play a role to educate our end users. That will be important.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. I heard to think that we're not as much in this place as we used to be, but let's ask the question anyway. How can we convince consumer in mass that RRBO formulated engine oil are not inferior? And in particular, when we do not advertise that RRBO is in the product for the most.
I think the problem is somewhere else. So you need the approval of the OEMs for the formulation. So this is the problem. I don't think if the approval is granted by the OEMs, I don't think that there are major objections for the end users.
No, they are in Europe, they are already used RRBOs, so where it's feasible, of course, it depends really on the formulations, because RRBOs are still limited in viscosity grades, but for engine oils, it's still a great opportunity to reduce the footprint and to go for circularity. And I think it's all about education as well, and if they match the API groups, so that's fine enough, that's fair enough. So we have to work on education of the end customers as well. And of the OEMs, yes, of course, and we maybe should use the experience already made in Europe, for example, to convince the OEMs in Asia.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm taking the third question here because it sounds like a cry for help. Again, recognising all the complexity that you shared, Stefan. So, too many regulations in the EU, and I won't go through all those acronyms. Ultimately, which regulation will be key to fostering RRBO? Please summarise.
Question. That's mainly the circularity regulation, circular materials, the obligation to recycle materials whenever possible.
Okay, thank you.
You have to prove if you don't do it.
You have to prove if you don't do it. Okay, so RRBO is absolutely necessary then.
Oh, yeah, recycling. It's reuse, recycle, disposal. That's the hierarchy. You know better than I do the hierarchy here. And but that's the hierarchy. First step is reuse, and then if it's not possible, somehow rework it. Yeah. That's obligation.
Yes, thank you. I hope that brings clarity to whoever asked that question. There was a lot covered. Okay, I will take the top question and then we'll come back to you, Aaron, after that. So, Stefan, I'll pose this one to you, although I suspect opinion only. Is it fair for the US and Europe to push lower CO2 emissions while countries like China and India see significant growth?
This is clearly a political decision. I would not like to comment.
That's absolutely fine. We've got a tough crowd out here today. Okay, all right, Aaron. You gave some good guidance and some good frameworks around how people can step into the technical service. If you were to give some guiding light on where they start, so you mentioned that both of the frameworks mentioned or featured were quite complex and very comprehensive. To get into this space, where do you recommend that they begin?
I think the first starting point is to have standards for all the machines, because oftentimes when you deal with customers and end users, they don't even have a list of what lubricants they use. They have a PO, they have things that they buy, but they don't have a living, documented standards based on what the machines that they got. So nobody knows what sort of OEM specifications they need to meet, viscosities, and so on. So they have to start with that, look at all the equipments, hundreds of equipment, 200 equipments, all the components, identify what they need, and then document it, someone to manage it, monitor it, and know from there they can understand what lubricants they need, and then deal with the suppliers on the most optimal product lineups that can give them the best performance. So they start with specific standards.
Amazing, thank you. I hope that guidance is well received. So look, we have covered 3 very different aspects of practical implications and practical guidance on how we can go about sustainability at all different levels of maturity, starting from what we are working with today, removing the piece around regulation and all the guidance that the governments are giving in good stead, but whether or not they're beneficial or not, we'll see. Starting right at the beginning, all the way to the very complex network of regulations that we have seen in Europe. So I just want to thank our panelists for sharing such a spectrum of insights, and hopefully we can take on some of that understanding and awareness back into our companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you for some of our speakers. We can stay for a while for the stay for photo. During the photos, so just remind you again for the cocktail tomorrow for registration, we still some seats available. So if you want to attend, just go ahead with the qualified. They have the notification for you to register. And next one, we're going to be the coffee break and